Ethan Hunt is about to embark on his final mission in Final Reckoning, or there could be more Mission Impossible movies on the way. It depends on who you ask. Either way, now is a good time to look back and recap his entire journey in chronological order. Mission Impossible began as a TV series in 1966, which ran for 7 seasons, plus another 2 in a late 80s revival. Are these connected to the movies? Yes and no. The first movie in 1996 brought back only one character, Jim Phelps, the team lead from season 2 onward. The actor who played him, Peter Graves, was offered the chance to reprise his role, but turned it down. Why? We'll get to that later. Ultimately, they replaced him with Jon Voight. In 2018, Fallout or Mission Impossible 6 sort of brought back another character because Hunt's agent profile reveals he was recruited by a Colonel Briggs. The season 1 lead in 66 was named Dan Briggs, so maybe since then he was promoted to Colonel. Otherwise, the movies borrow elements from the show, like starting on a fuse over clips from the upcoming story, masks, gadgets, and self-destructing tapes that start with "Your mission should you choose to accept it." And, of course, that classic theme song by Lalo Schifrin. Aside from these borrowed elements, the movies make little reference to the show. So now, let's talk about Ethan Hunt. He was recruited to the IMF, or Impossible Missions Force, in 1993, under circumstances we only recently learned about in Mission Impossible 7, Dead Reckoning. According to ex-IMF director, now CIA director Eugene Kittredge, Ethan was offered a choice: life in prison or dedicate his unique talents to the IMF. This was a major surprise. Up until now, Hunt was essentially portrayed as morally perfect. So what could he have done to find himself on the wrong side of the law? We don't know much other than quick flashbacks that reveal a man named Gabriel targeted Marie, someone somehow important to Ethan. He wasn't able to save her, and the police found Ethan with her body. We don't know anything else, so I assume they pinned the murder on Ethan. And who was Marie? Maybe a romantic partner? We'll likely learn more in the next movie. How about before that? What do we know about Ethan's origins? Not much, and some of it is contradictory. Like Joker, his origins are multiple choice.
If I'm going to have a past, I prefer it to be multiple choice.
The original movie's DVD release includes a special feature to view agent dossiers. Ethan's reveals he grew up on a farm in Madison, Wisconsin, where he battled the seclusion by assuming different personalities during childhood play. That's why he's so good at disguises. In college, he further refined those skills, studying linguistics, theater, and drama. He was a theater kid, and he does not at all remind me of the ones I went to school with. After that, he joined the CIA Training Academy in Virginia, where he ended up on the IMF's radar by pulling the largest ever class prank, impersonating the commanding officer at the promotion ceremony, and get this, refusing to shake hands with graduates. Classic Ethan. The agent profile in Fallout, on the other hand, claims he served in the U.S. Army, then double majored in engineering and international relations at the University of Pennsylvania. Like I mentioned earlier, he was then recruited by Dan Briggs, or Colonel Briggs, versus the DVD extra, which mentioned Jim Phelps. The most important history comes from those flashbacks in Dead Reckoning. Everything else I think we can say is semi-canon and flexible until the movies say something explicitly. 3 years after Ethan's recruitment, Mission Impossible happens. An arms dealer codenamed Max looks for corruptible agents and finds one at the IMF. Someone who takes the moniker Job. Once the IMF figures out they have a traitor in their ranks, they devise a mole hunt, a fake mission to flush them out. The lightning rod will be a knock list, revealing the identities of every CIA cover agent in Europe. The IMF plants a fake list, claims someone is trying to steal it, then sends Jim Phelps and his team, including Ethan, to stop it. IMF director Eugene Kittredge wants to see if anyone on the team tries to steal that list for themselves to sell it to Max. That would reveal the traitor. Of course, Ethan doesn't know any of this, neither does Jim or anyone else on the team, including Mighty Ducks coach Gordon Bombay. It's no mistake Emilio Estevez was included in the cast, but uncredited. It was a way to surprise audiences by killing off a character played by a star to raise the stakes, a tactic used by another movie in 1996. For those of you out there listening but not watching, Scream is the movie I'm talking about. During the mission, everything goes to hell. Nearly everyone is killed, and the list is stolen. The only survivor? Ethan Hunt. He must be the traitor. Once Ethan realizes he's under suspicion, he has no choice but to go rogue and find the real traitor to clear his name. And how do you find a traitor? You become one. Ethan gets in touch with Max and poses as a disgruntled agent, ready to break bad just like Job. Before they're face to face, a revelation. Ethan was not the only survivor. There's also Claire, who happens to be Jim's wife. She can't go back to the IMF since they'll assume she's working with Ethan, so she does exactly that. Works with him to find the real traitor. Finally, Ethan gets to Max, or should I say Maxine. This arms dealer turns out to be, as the screenplay puts it, a tall woman of indeterminate age, handsome to the point of severity. Something I get all the time. Not the part about being a tall woman, the severely handsome part. Ethan gains her trust by warning that the list Job sold them is a decoy. The moment she tries to read it, the place will swarm with agents. Thanks to his warning, once Kittredge and his people kick the doors down, Max has gone in the wind, and now she's ready to make a deal. Ethan will steal the real knock list and sell it to her for $10 million, plus she will give him Job. Max agrees. Now Ethan just needs to break into a black vault at CIA HQ. To do that, he'll need help. But who would help a disavowed agent? Other disavowed agents. Ethan finds two: pilot Franz Krieger and master hacker Luther Stickle, sometimes known as the Net Ranger. I'm sure a very cool nickname in 1996. And after this movie, Stickle will stick around, becoming a mainstay in the franchise and a close friend of Ethan's. The Black Vault is heavily secured, including a pressure-sensitive floor. If anything, even a bead of sweat touches that floor, the alarm will go off. That's how Ethan ends up dangling from a vent like this, the most iconic maneuver in action movie history, until bullet time in '99. They escape with the disc, and then trouble. From the start, it was clear Krieger was only in it for the money, while Luther was there for the love of the game. He just can't say no to a good hack. He also didn't know what they were stealing, and if he did, probably would have said no. But Krieger is a bit lighter on morals and just sees dollar signs. He wants to meet Max, and holds on to the disc as leverage. That's when Ethan reveals yet another talent: sleight of hand. Krieger's disc is a fake. Ethan swapped it for the real one without his notice. Disgruntled, the pilot throws his in the trash and storms out. And that was the real trick. Krieger did have the real disc, and Ethan just tricked him into leaving it behind. After Krieger's attempted betrayal, Ethan discovers another betrayal, a deeper one. The traitor's nickname Job comes from the Bible, part of his code with Max. Ethan figured out that code when he noticed a Bible at his team's safe house. Now he notices the stamp: Drake Hotel, Chicago. And what's so special about the Drake Hotel? That's where Jim Phelps stayed on his most recent recruiting assignment. Could Phelps be the real Job? It would certainly explain why his wife survived that failed mission. Now, more trouble. Kittredge devises a plan to flush Ethan out from hiding. He has Ethan's mother and uncle arrested as the masterminds of a drug ring. One of the weirder plot points I always forget about until I rewatch this movie. The plan seems to work because it gets Ethan to pick up a payphone and give Kittredge a call. Of course, Ethan hangs up just before they can get a trace, but he does reveal that he's in London. All part of Ethan's plan. Not part of that plan, the guy on the phone next to him turns around and reveals it's Phelps. alive. He spins a story of taking a bullet but making it out of the mission alive. He claims Kittredge is the mole and the one who shot him. But Ethan knows the truth. Phelps is the traitor. In his older age, he's feeling obsolete and unneeded by his country. He's feeling owed for everything he's given. So Phelps tried to make some money by stealing the knock list and killing everyone on his own team, with help from Franz Krieger, something Ethan pieced together when he recognized Krieger's knife from that failed mission. Ethan tells Phelps that he has the real knock list and that he's arranged to meet Max on a train tomorrow to make the sale. Ethan sends word to Kittredge too, who has just arrived in London. All the pieces are falling into place. Max, Phelps, and Kittredge, they will all be on that train. Ethan only has one question. Is Claire part of this, or is she just another patsy? He gets his answer the next day. First, he makes the sale, $10 million for the knock list. Then, he waits for Claire to come to him, though today, he isn't himself. He's wearing a Jim Phelps mask. Claire approaches him and asks if they really have to kill Ethan. Can't they just steal the money and run? Leave him to take the blame. And like that, Ethan knows that she's betrayed him. It's around then the real Phelps shows up and demands the money at gunpoint. Ethan hands it over and shows what else he has in his pocket. A pair of glasses with a built-in camera, transmitting live to Kittredge. Knowing he's incriminated himself, Phelps shoots Claire dead as a distraction and escapes to the top of the train where Krieger plans to pick him up via helicopter. A helicopter Ethan drags through a tunnel by clipping it onto the train. Finally, he pulls out an explosive stick of gum and blows up the helicopter along with Krieger and Phelps. Can you imagine how much that would feel like a slap in the face if you grew up with Jim Phelps as a hero? That'd be like Ethan Hunt turning into a villain in the inevitable Mission Impossible reboot that's going to come sometime in the future. And that is why Graves turned down reprising the role. He felt it was a betrayal of the character he played in the 60s, 70s, and 80s. As for the knock list, Luther jammed the signal so it couldn't be transmitted off the train, and now Kittredge confiscates the hard copy. As for Max, she is the head of a powerful arms-dealing empire. She could be of more use to them than as a prisoner, so her and Kittredge agree to make a deal. It's a happy ending for all. Ethan's name is cleared, his mom and uncle are free, and even Luther is officially off the disavowed list. But the good times only last so long when you're with the IMF. Mission Impossible 2, released in 2000, takes place 3 years after the original in 1999. While Ethan grows his hair out and vacations by free-soloing at Utah's Dead Horse Point, a new threat emerges. At Biosite Pharmaceuticals, a Dr. Vladimir Nikorovich splices together strains of influenza to create a cure for them all, Bellerophon. But for CEO John McCloy, that isn't enough. He has the doctor make him the ultimate disease, too, Chimera. The plan is as obvious as it is devious. Release Chimera so the world needs Bellerophon and make a boatload of money. It's too much for Dr. Nikorovich. He decides to smuggle samples of the cure and disease to the CDC and stop McCloy. To do that, he needs to get from Sydney to Atlanta. For protection on the journey, he calls an old friend, Ethan Hunt. But with Ethan on vacation in an undisclosed location, the IMF instead sends someone else in an Ethan mask, Agent Sean Ambrose. And Ambrose turns out to be corrupt. He knows how much Bellerophon will be worth, and he sees dollar signs. So en route to Atlanta, he steals the doctor's bag and jumps out of the plane before letting it crash, killing the doctor and everyone else on board. A major error. Ambrose didn't realize the bag only contains the cure, Bellerophon, but Chimera? Dr. Nikorovich was smuggling that in his own blood. It takes 20 hours to become terminal, so as long as he took Bellerophon before then, he would have been fine. New IMF director Swan Beck, played by Anthony Hopkins. Easy to forget he was in this franchise once. He finds the real Ethan and sends him on a mission to recruit professional thief Naya Nordoff Hall. But things get complicated because Ethan also recruits her into his heart. Cheesy? Yes. An accurate portrayal of Mission Impossible 2's tone? Also, yes, things get more complicated when Ethan finds out why Swanbeck wanted Naya. Not for her thieving abilities, but for her ex-boyfriend, Sean Ambrose. Sean wants Naya back bad. So the mission is simple. Send her back to Ambrose. He confides in her, she reports back to Ethan, and they foil his plot.
I don't think I can get her to do it.
You mean it'll be difficult?
Very.
Well, this is not mission difficult, Mr. Hunt. It's mission impossible. Difficult should be a walk in the park for you.
They inject her with a tracking device and send her to Ambrose, while Ethan monitors with help from agents Billy Baird and Luther Stickle. Ambrose falls for the ruse as hard as he fell for Naya. In fact, when his right hand, Hugh Stamp, questions her motives, Ambrose cuts off the tip of his pinky as punishment. With Naya's help, Ethan and his team spy on Ambrose. They find him meeting with Biosite CEO John McCloy. Ambrose attempts to blackmail the CEO with incriminating images, showing how McCloy killed one of his own scientists by testing Chimera on him. But to what end is Ambrose blackmailing him? Ethan and his team find answers by kidnapping McCloy. They find out about his plan to release a bioweapon and profit off the cure, but Nikorovich stole all the samples of the cure before Ambrose took them for himself. Meaning, McCloy has the disease but no cure, and Ambrose has the cure but no disease. And that means for Ethan a new mission. Get into Biosite and destroy every last sample of Chimera. But it won't be easy, not only thanks to the facility's state-of-the-art security, but also because Ambrose knows Ethan well enough to be him. He wears an Ethan mask and approaches Naya. That's how he finds out they're working together. And worse than that, when she tries to kiss him, jealousy. Ambrose never had her back. It was all a lie. Now, he's vengeful. When he gets word Ethan picked up McCloy, he predicts his next target, Biosite. Ethan gets into the facility by jumping out of a helicopter and timing the fall just right to slip between louvers on the roof, and retract the cable all within 40 seconds. Keeping the louvers open any longer would have triggered the alarm. The original screenplay made it 30 seconds, but I guess they figured things were hard enough already for Ethan. Also worth noting, Ethan ends up hanging off the cable with his arms and legs outstretched again, just like in the Black Vault from the first movie. So iconic and so often referenced, it's even paid homage in other Mission Impossible movies. And this will not be the last time. Inside, he destroys Chimera samples, but before he can kill the last of it, Ambrose and his men arrive. They shoot at each other until Ambrose reveals a hostage, Naya. He sends her to grab the final Chimera injection gun, but instead of returning it to him, she injects herself with it. Now, he cannot kill her, because that would also destroy the last of the virus. Ethan tries to get her out of the facility, but he can't escape with both of them. She begs him to kill her instead, destroy the virus, and end it here, something Ethan would never do. Instead, he makes a promise. He will get Bellerophon into her system before her 20 hours are up. He escapes. As her final hours approach, Ambrose meets with McCloy at a storage facility. Ambrose now has it all: the cure and the disease contained in a sample of Naya's blood. Not only that, he's also released her into the public, hoping to start an epidemic and make Bellerophon worth billions. Ambrose doesn't have the infrastructure to profit himself, so he makes a deal. He'll give McCloy back the samples in exchange for a 51% share in his company. While they talk business, Ambrose gets word of Ethan breaking into the facility, so he sends Stamp after him, who returns a few minutes later, dragging Ethan behind him. Ambrose wants to hear him speak before putting a bullet in him, but it seems Stamp has broken Ethan's jaw. So be it. Ambrose executes him, then notices the wound on his pinky. This is not Ethan. It's Stamp, with his mouth duct-taped under an Ethan mask, which means Stamp, the one still alive, is actually Ethan, and while Ambrose was distracted killing not Ethan, real Ethan has made off with the Chimera and Bellerophon. Also, there are a lot of doves around, because John Woo directed this movie. Ethan survives everything they throw at him, including a motorcycle duel with Ambrose that ends with Ethan sparing his life. Luther and Billy find Naya on a cliffside, planning to throw herself off it to protect the world from the virus in her blood. They pick her up before she ends it all and get her back to Ethan. But before he can administer the cure, Ambrose points a gun at him.
You should have killed me.
Then Ethan does this sick move where he tosses the cure to Luther, kicks a gun up out of the sand, catches it while letting himself fall, and shooting the bad guy. So awesome. Ambrose is dead, Naya is cured, her criminal record is expunged, and as for Ethan, it's time for another vacation. Only this time, he won't be alone. We next visit Ethan Hunt in Mission Impossible 3, which takes place 7 years later, the same year it was released, in 2006. And a lot can change in 7 years. Him and Naya don't last. Instead, he finds love in a nurse named Julia Mead, who he meets while heliboarding, because of course he does. He's retired from field work, though still supports the IMF, training new recruits, though that side of his life is kept secret even from Julia. His cover story? He studies traffic patterns for the Department of Transportation. Also, he can read lips now, and Jesse Pinkman is about to become his brother-in-law. That's right, he and Julia are engaged. Things are looking up for Ethan, until he hears from IMF Director of Operations John Musgrave. One of Ethan's trainees, Lindsay Ferris, has been kidnapped by black market trafficker Owen Davian. Ethan tries to stay away, but impossible. He accepts the mission and they rescue Ferris. Except something strange. During their escape, she asks him to shut off his transmitter. She has something to tell Ethan she doesn't want the IMF to know about. She never gets a chance to say what, because once they're out of the facility, Ethan finds out just how ruthless Owen Davian can be. He's implanted a small charge in Ferris's head. Their only hope is to zap her with a defibrillator to short the charge and incidentally stop her heart, then hope that a second zap brings her back. They never get the chance to try because a few seconds before the defibrillator is ready, that charge goes off, killing her instantly. Like that, Ethan's semi-retirement is officially at an end. As for next steps, IMF tech Benji recovers email fragments off a laptop found at the facility. They learn Davian is attending a function at the Vatican City tomorrow to sell the rabbit's foot to an unknown buyer for $850 million. We never find out what the rabbit's foot is, other than it's dangerous, maybe apocalyptically dangerous. It's a literal manifestation of a MacGuffin. Its exact nature is less important than the fact that people want it. This movie was also directed by J.J. Abrams, so it also works as a play on his tendency toward mystery boxes. Until now, Ethan's fiancée has given him a lot of leeway, but she can tell something is wrong, and now suddenly he needs to leave again. She trusts him, but just wants to know that this is real. So he proves it at the hospital chapel by marrying her that night. After a night of passion in a storage closet, it's off to the Vatican, where Ethan scales the wall, looks at the camera so he is talking to you, and says, "Humpty Dumpty sat on a wall." Here's the clip so you know I'm not lying.
Humpty Dumpty sat on a wall.
And for the third time in the franchise, he ends up hanging from a cable doing this. Through subterfuge, masks, and gadgets, they get a hold of Davian, but their questioning, interrogation, and threats yield nothing, except one thing, a question from Davian for Ethan. Do you have a wife, a girlfriend, and a promise? She, whoever she is, will suffer and Ethan will die in front of her. Soon, Ethan gets a warning from beyond the grave. While she was alive, Ferris sent Ethan a postcard containing an encrypted microdot. It arrived after her death, but Luther was only now able to decrypt it. The message? IMF Director Theodore Brassel is a traitor working with Davian. Brassel is higher up the chain than Musgrave, the one who pulled Ethan out of retirement. As though on cue, after watching Ferris's warning, they are attacked. If you remember the commercials where the car explodes and Ethan flies sideways, something I'd never seen before, flying sideways like that from an explosion behind you, so cool, this is that moment. Davian escapes, rescued by his mercenaries, and then Ethan's greatest nightmare. The villain targets Julia. Before Ethan can stop him, he takes her captive and calls with demands. Davian had a suitcase on him containing the location of the Rabbit's Foot. That briefcase is now in IMF custody. Ethan has 48 hours to get the Rabbit's Foot and hand it to Davian, or his wife dies. Before Ethan can take more than a handful of steps, Brassel has him picked up by IMF and taken into custody. Why? Ethan's mission in the Vatican was kept off the books to give Musgrave deniability. Plus, there was that moment during the rescue operation where Ferris tried to make him turn off his transmitter. Both these actions make him look suspicious, giving the traitorous Brassel the pretense he needs to take Ethan off the board. But he still has friends at the IMF. Musgrave takes advantage of Ethan's lip-reading abilities to give him a silent message, the location of a specific apartment in Shanghai. Then he hands Ethan a small razor, everything he needs to break out. At that apartment in Shanghai, he meets Luther and his team, who tell him what they found in that briefcase. The Rabbit's Foot is located in a nearby military contractor in a well-protected lab. Ethan does some math, and that night on the roof turns theory into reality, running not toward the military contractor's building, but away from it. He jumps, the bungee cord catches, and following his math, it swings back toward the target. He cuts the cord, and a perfect landing, sort of. He gets in and gets out with the Rabbit's Foot in hand. He comes to Davian's chosen meeting spot, alone as ordered. One of Davian's men picks him up and makes him drink from a vial. The next time Ethan wakes, it's thanks to someone sticking an explosive charge up his nose. Across from him is Julia, and Davian holding a gun at her head. 10 seconds. That's how long he gives Ethan to tell the truth. Where is the Rabbit's Foot? Ethan just handed it over, didn't he? Davian keeps counting, no matter what Ethan says. Didn't I give it to you? What else can I do? How can we fix this? It doesn't matter. Davian counts to 10, and he pulls the trigger. Then, Ethan finds out Ferris was right about corruption at the IMF. But it wasn't Brassel. Davian leaves the room, and Musgrave takes his place. He tells Ethan why they had to kill his wife. They had to confirm the Rabbit's Foot he stole was the real thing, but it's complicated. You can't just open it. Instead, they had to push Ethan to his limit and see if he'd confess it was a fake. When they took it all the way and he didn't crack, that was all the proof they needed. He did bring the real thing. But it was all a show. Julia's face is a mask, concealing another woman who worked for Davian, someone who failed him, earning her execution. Musgrave keeps talking. Why is he working with Davian? Because he's learned that you can't stop evil. You kill or arrest one Davian, and another takes his place. Instead, better to work with him. Use him to your own ends. In 18 hours, the Rabbit's Foot will reach a buyer in the Middle East, and they'll have credible intel to prove it, giving the U.S. the green light to attack. Then comes the cleanup and infrastructure. Democracy wins. In any case, Ethan will die, but his wife, the real Julia, can still live. If Ethan tells Musgrave what was in Ferris's microdot, Musgrave has to know if he's compromised. Sure, Ethan agrees, if he puts Julia on the phone as proof of life. That's when Musgrave makes a grave error. He gets close to Ethan. Once Musgrave is unconscious on the floor, Ethan calls Benji and has him trace the call Musgrave made to Julia. Ethan runs to the building. He is a fantastic runner. He takes out the guards and finds Julia, but Davian is there waiting for him. He finally activates that explosive charge in Ethan's head, giving him about 4 minutes to live. Despite the excruciating pain in his skull, Ethan kills Davian via truck, then works with Julia on saving his own life. No defibrillator in the building, so they settle for electrocution the old-fashioned way. Ethan pulls a couple of wires out of a control box and grabs a bowl of water. He hands her a gun, says "I love you," and she flips the switch. Ethan dies. The charge is disabled. A couple more men show up, including Musgrave. Julia kills them both before administering CPR. Ethan lives. He grabs the rabbit's foot off Musgrave's body and heads outside with Julia, finally telling her about a little something called the Impossible Missions Force. He finally introduces her to his friends from work, and they take off for their honeymoon. Over time, reality sets in. Davian was only the first. There will surely be more like him. As long as Julia is with Ethan, she will be in danger, and so will the world. Every time something bad happens, he'll think, I should have been there, and she'll wonder, who's watching the world while Ethan's watching me? By the time we revisit Ethan in 2011's Ghost Protocol, she's already gone. She and Ethan faked her death, and she's begun a new life without him. Her death was pinned on a 6-man Serbian hit squad, all of whom Ethan murdered ostensibly for revenge, though it wasn't exactly in cold blood. At the end of the movie, Ethan is asked about this.
You killed those Serbians. I had to get her back.
I had to get her back makes it sound like she was targeted but kidnapped, not killed. And Ethan had to go get her back. The kills also served a dual purpose, saving Julia and getting Ethan tossed into Rankow prison. Why? Because the IMF suspected an emerging terrorist who goes by the moniker Cobalt had people in that prison. Behind bars was the perfect place for Ethan to gather intel. But that mission comes to a premature end when assassin Sabine Moreau gets her hands on Russian nuclear launch codes, with intent to sell them to Cobalt. IMF agent Trevor Hanaway had intercepted them on a train before the assassin killed him and took off with the files. Though she left behind a new enemy, Jane Carter. She's the one who put Hanaway in the field. On top of the guilt of getting him killed, he was also more than just an agent to her. And now, Jane is out for blood. First stop is Rankow Prison, where she and Benji break out Ethan. Congrats to Benji, by the way, who passed the field exam. Now he's in on the action and no longer Ethan's guy in the chair. With Ethan freed, the IMF sends instructions. They believe Cobalt is or was a level 1 nuclear strategist for Russian intelligence, so they should be able to find info on him in the archive. Which archive? The highly secured one inside the Kremlin. They break in using some new gadgets, including a hallway projector screen that effectively turns you invisible. Inside, they find Cobalt has already taken the files himself to protect his anonymity, and he blows up the Kremlin for good measure, leaving Ethan and the IMF to take the blame. Knocked out by the explosion, Ethan wakes up in handcuffs until he gets his hands on a paperclip. That night, he meets with the IMF secretary and his chief analyst, William Brandt. Ethan asks about a man he saw at the Kremlin by sketching the guy's face on his hand in the back of a moving vehicle. There is nothing this man can't do. Brandt recognizes the sketch as Kurt Hendricks. 190 IQ, served in Swedish Special Forces, professor of physics at Stockholm University, specialist in nuclear endgame theory.
Has to resign, well, because he's crazy.
Kurt Hendricks, who walked out of the Kremlin with a nuclear launch device today, is Cobalt. He blew up the Kremlin to cover his tracks, and with Russia blaming the US, the president has no choice but to initiate Ghost Protocol. Hey, that's the name of the movie, and what you call it when the US government disavows the entire IMF. Their plan is to arrest Ethan as a rogue extremist and pin the bombing on him and his team. Unless he were to escape custody, wink wink, something the secretary has arranged. Though his plans are moot because seconds later, they're assaulted by Russian security forces. The secretary is killed while Ethan and Brandt just barely escape. They reconvene with Jane and Benji, then review a file the secretary handed Ethan before his untimely demise. It reveals more about Hendricks and his twisted philosophy. To quote, "World destruction is an unpleasant but necessary part of evolution. He believes in accelerating the end of the world through nuclear war, so the little population that remains becomes stronger in the aftermath, with a greater belief in the need for peace." Now, Hendricks is closer than ever to realizing his demented dream. In fact, 36 hours from now, Sabine Moreau will check into the Burj Hotel in Dubai to sell her stolen nuclear launch codes to Cobalt's right-hand man, Wistrom. It's up to the IMF to stop that sale from happening, and right now the entirety of the IMF is composed of the 4 people in this room: Ethan, Jane, Brant, and Benji. They devise a simple plan that should end with Wistrom convinced he had a meeting which never actually happened, and leaving the hotel with decoy launch codes so they can follow him back to Cobalt. It's a crazy simple plan, but just in case, I'll explain step by step how it goes. First, they need control of the elevators and security cameras by hardwiring into the servers on the 130th floor. So Ethan scales the building using some new Spider-Man gloves, one of which functions without a hitch. With the cameras blind, they get to redecorating, creating a decoy room to match Moreau's suite. And when Wistrom arrives, they commandeer the elevator to send him there, where Jane will pretend to be Moreau. So they send Wistrom to a decoy room with a decoy Moreau. How about the real Moreau? Ethan will be meeting her in her actual suite while playing the role of Wistrom. Just a couple of wrinkles. The mask machine broke, so this whole plan hinges on Moreau and Wistrom having never met. And Wistrom brought a cryptographer to authenticate the codes, so decoy codes won't work. They have to hand over the real thing. You might ask, why not just stop the code from changing hands altogether? No codes, no nuclear launch. Brant asks that very question. Well, following the codes now is their only way of finding Cobalt. If they stop the codes from reaching him, he'll just disappear again and find some other way to a nuclear apocalypse. And maybe they won't be able to stop him, so it's now or never. To recap, in the decoy room, we have Wistrom and his cryptographer meeting with a decoy Moreau, played by Jane. In the real room, we have Moreau with the stolen launch codes meeting with a decoy Wistrom and cryptographer, played by Ethan and Brant. When Moreau hands Brant the launch codes for authentication, a special contact lens in his eye snaps photos, sending them to a printer in Jane's briefcase, allowing her to hand them over to Wistrom's cryptographer. They pass as the real thing because they are the real thing. Finally, Wistrom leaves with the codes, which they've marked with a unique isotope, allowing them to track its location. Mission accomplished. Just one little hitch. Moreau spots the lens in Brant's eye. If she gets out word the codes are marked, they're toast. She must be stopped. Ethan wants her alive, she might be useful, but Jane kicks her out a window. Either she had no choice or her vendetta over Hanaway got the better of her. Fun fact, by the way, the Burj Khalifa is the tallest building in the world, so Moreau fell quite a long distance. Now back to Wistrom. As a sandstorm overtakes the city, Ethan chases after him, but can't get his hands on him before he's gone in the wind. And it turns out this whole time, Wistrom was never at the meeting. It was Hendricks in a mask. Cobalt, the man they've been after, was in the room with them, and they just let him go. But they aren't done yet. He has a case, and he has the codes. He still needs one more thing to launch a nuke, a tactical satellite. While Ethan gathers intel with help from a friend he made at Rankout Prison, Brant opens up to the team. He wasn't always an analyst. He used to be a field agent until a job went south, and the woman he was supposed to protect ended up dead. She left behind a husband named Ethan Hunt. The guilt and fear of screwing up again left Brant paralyzed, and he retreated from the field. He might feel different if he knew she was alive, but he can't know that. No one can. More important for right now, that satellite. Ethan finds out that Hendricks plans on using one owned by Playboy media tycoon Bridge Naff. So the team heads to Mumbai, where Brant leaps into a computer array and Benji catches him with a magnet. Another homage to Ethan on the cable in '96. From here, Brant can shut down the satellite, if they get the access code, which only Naff knows. That's where Jane comes in. A little seduction, add a dash of violent threat, and before long, she has that code. And it's too late. Hendricks uploads a virus that shuts down the server, blocking access to the satellite. It can't be stopped, but on the bright side, he just gave away his location. On the not so bright side, he'll have launch capability in less than 5 minutes. If they can't stop him, he'll send a nuke from Russia to America to kickstart nuclear war. Ethan moves fast, but as nearly superhuman as he is, 5 minutes is 5 minutes. Before Ethan reaches Hendricks, the missile is already in the air. One final hope. Maybe there's a way to abort the warhead. If there is, it would be on the launch device, the one in Hendricks' case. That hope fades fast when Wistrom shuts down the relay. Even if Ethan gets the case, the abort signal will never reach the bomb. Benji works on getting the relay back online, while Ethan goes after the case. He and Hendricks fight in a mechanized parking garage, an amazing brawl mixing slapstick and high-stakes tension. It ends with Hendricks leaping to his death to keep the case out of Ethan's hands. But he didn't count on Ethan's bravery or recklessness. Ethan drives a car off the platform, putting his life in the airbag. He crawls out of the car and hits the button, then hits it again, and keeps hitting it until Benji has the relay online. The signal transmits, and the bomb plunges uselessly into the San Francisco Bay. Hendricks holds on to life just long enough to watch his plan fail, and to hear the corny one-liner Ethan shouted when he hit the button.
Mission accomplished!
Thankfully, Hendricks was the only one to hear it, and now he's dead. But Ethan laughs about it 8 weeks later over drinks with his old friend, Luther, and he puts a certain matter to rest, telling Brant about his ex-wife, how she's alive, how he can let go of the guilt and fear. As for Ethan, he can't be with her, but he can see her in the distance. He smiles, she smiles back, before returning to her second life, and Ethan picks up the phone for his next mission briefing. 4 years later, Mission Impossible Rogue Nation. This one starts with Ethan holding onto a plane and breaking into it while airborne, so you know it's going to be a good one. On that plane, he intercepts enough VX nerve gas to devastate a major city. At his next mission briefing, he finds out why. The gas was being transported by low-level Chechen separatists without the means to get it themselves. So, who provided it? The Syndicate, a shadow organization Ethan has been investigating for the last year, a group committed to inciting revolution by enabling acts of terror around the globe. And now they have Ethan, because this briefing was not left by the IMF, it was left by them.
Because we are the Syndicate, Mr. Hunt, and now we know who you are.
The listening booth fills with sleeping gas, while Ethan is forced to watch a man execute the operator of London's IMF terminal in cold blood. Ethan wakes up restrained to a pillar before a Syndicate enforcer beats him. Before he can put his sharper instruments to work, the woman in the room reveals herself as an ally. She starts a brawl while Ethan escapes by, I don't even know how to describe this, one of his best maneuvers in the franchise. He flips upside down, holds onto the pillar while kicking his legs to slowly work his way up until he reaches the top and leaps off it. Or as the screenplay describes it, fight ensues. That woman gets him out of the facility while she herself stays behind, with a cover story that Ethan overpowered her. Once freed, he calls Brant for help, only to find out the IMF has been officially disbanded after one too many close calls, including that nuke which clipped the Transamerica Pyramid 4 years ago. All assets have been moved under CIA Director Hunley. Once again, Ethan is forced to go rogue, to run from a CIA that believes he's chasing ghosts, that the Syndicate is a figment of his imagination, created to justify the IMF's existence. Hunley promises that he will find him. The next 6 months prove otherwise, as Ethan remains elusive, but not complacent. He still pursues the Syndicate, and he's closing in, but finishing the job will be impossible on his own, so he recruits some reliable help, Benji. Ethan has reason to believe the man he saw in London will be at the opera tonight. Benji runs facial recognition scans from behind the scenes, while Ethan searches the old-fashioned way. He doesn't find the man, but he does spot a syndicate assassin, a very tall assassin, there to take out the Chancellor of Austria. And he spots a familiar woman, the one who helped him escape the syndicate 6 months ago. Ethan gets to the assassin and fight ensues. He takes out one assassin but finds another with a gun trained on the Chancellor. That woman is pointing her gun in the same direction. How do you stop two assassins aiming for the same target? You beat them to it. Ethan fires a shot that grazes the Chancellor's shoulder, a warning that saves his life. Until the bomb planted in his car finishes the job. Ethan, meanwhile, finds the woman and escapes with her outside where Benji picks them up. There, he finally learns her name, Ilsa Faust. He's pieced the rest together himself. She is British intelligence, working undercover to investigate the syndicate. After letting Ethan go in London, she lost the syndicate's trust. Assassinating the Chancellor was supposed to win it back, though her plan was the same as Ethan's, put him in a hospital rather than the morgue. To maintain her cover, Ilsa leaves the car but makes it look like an escape, and she returns to the syndicate. Afterward, Ethan fills Benji in on what he's learned. The syndicate is a rogue nation composed of former operatives from intelligence agencies from around the globe. KSA, Mossad, and all the rest, they wield their power to control world events, orchestrating assassinations, wars, and catastrophes to reach what they believe will be a better world. They are, in a sense, the anti-IMF. And somehow, that man from London is the key. He's been at every one of these events, but always slips away. Their next move? Lipstick Ilsa left behind during her escape doubles as a USB drive containing information about a secure computer facility in Morocco. So they head that way, and in Casablanca, reconvene with Ilsa, where she tells them more. The man Ethan's been searching for is named Solomon Lane, former British intelligence. Ilsa has been on an undercover assignment to identify the members of his organization, and now she's closer than ever. Lane had a ledger containing all the inner workings of the syndicate. One of his agents stole it, hoping to blackmail him, and kept it in that secure computer facility. He died being interrogated for the access code. Now, Lane has a problem, and he sent Ilsa to fix it, to break into that facility and get the ledger back. But it's impossible, which just so happens to be Ethan Hunt's specialty. Getting inside involves all the usual subterfuge, the gadgets, the hacking, but the real star of this show is the water. For Benji to pass security and get to the computer, Ethan has to get inside the liquid-cooled Taurus and install a bogus security profile for him. If any metal enters the intake, the alarm will sound, so no oxygen tanks. Ethan will have to hold his breath for 3 minutes, while exerting himself physically. Ethan installs the profile just in time, but spends a little too long down there, about 5 minutes of screen time, and passes out. He only survives when Ilsa jumps in after him and zaps him back to life. Then she steals the ledger for herself and runs. Car chase ensues. Luther and Brandt are there too, by the way. After that assassination, Hundley blamed Ethan and sent out a new order to kill on sight, so Brandt recruited Luther's help to find him first. But even with their assistance, despite Ethan and Benji surviving the most ridiculous car chase of the franchise, despite all that, Ilsa escapes with the drive. Good thing Benji made a copy. Unfortunately, it's triple encrypted and can't be opened without a phrase spoken by a specific individual, the Prime Minister of Great Britain. If they know that, Lane must know it too, which means he'll be going after the Prime Minister. Unless they get to Lane first. How? With help from Ilsa. Ethan tracks her down, and she's in a listening mood, because she was just betrayed by her own country. She took the ledger back to British intelligence, hoping to finally be freed of her undercover assignment. Instead, they sent her back in the field with a reminder that she has no choice. Not only that, they erased the disk without her knowledge, putting her at great risk when she returned to Lane empty-handed. She and Ethan talk, and whether she knows it or not, this talk is all part of Lane's manipulative schemes, a distraction, while his enforcer kidnaps Benji. Now Lane has leverage. He calls Ethan with a job. Bring me the unlocked disc by midnight tonight, or Benji dies. So Ethan decides they're going after the Prime Minister. It's exactly what Lane wants them to do, but Ethan sees something no one else does, a way to win this game of chess. Brandt calls Hunley to warn him about Ethan's insane plot and asks him to come to London. This, of course, is part of Ethan's plan, just like the first Mission Impossible, where Ethan called Kittredge and had him come to London, ostensibly giving away his location, but in reality, part of the plan. Hunley gets to London and warns Chief Atlee of British intelligence that Ethan is after the Prime Minister. Together they visit the Prime Minister, they tell him about Ethan and the supposed syndicate. The Prime Minister is disgusted. The syndicate was something Chief Atlee proposed some time ago, to recruit former agents from other nations and operate in secrecy while exterminating their enemies. The Prime Minister rejected the proposal, but Atlee proceeded behind his back. All of this proves Ethan right to Hunley, and Ethan made it happen. In fact, he's in the room right now wearing an Atlee mask. He hits the Prime Minister with a poisoned dart to make him pliable, then has him unlock the drive, which provides access to £2.4 billion in untraceable currency. When the real Atlee shows up, he gets a dart too, and Ethan confirms the truth. Atlee created the syndicate, but lost control to Solomon Lane. That's why he wiped the disc to cover up his involvement. Finally, Ethan brings the unlocked disc to Lane's chosen meeting spot and finds Benji, who's been fitted with an explosive vest. Lane uses Benji as a mouthpiece and promises one wrong move, they and all the nearby civilians die. First, Lane shows off a little, peacocking how strategic and manipulative he's been. All this has gone according to plan from day one, killing that operator in front of Ethan, leaving him alive. After that, Lane knew Ethan would stop at nothing to find him. He knew it would ultimately lead to this, the drive, unlocked, back in his hands. Except Ethan is pretty smart too. He's made himself an asset too important for Lane to kill. But how could that be? What is more important than the drive? Nothing. That's why Ethan had to become the drive. He memorized it, all 2.4 billion in numbered accounts, then destroyed the disk. Now Ethan has all the leverage. Lane deactivates the bomb and lets Benji go. Now it's just Ethan and Ilsa surrounded by syndicate enforcers. You know what that means. Fight ensues. They escape and they trap Lane in a box before filling it with noxious gas, just like Lane did to Ethan 6 months ago, or 2 hours ago in movie time, or 10 minutes ago in recap time. Like that, Ilsa is freed after 2 years of grueling undercover work. The IMF is reinstated on Hunley's recommendation. As for the syndicate, we'll get back to that later. Okay, now, Mission Impossible Fallout, also known as the one with Henry Cavill, takes place 2 years later, which puts it in 2017. Without Lane at the helm, the Syndicate's rogue operatives continue to wreak havoc under a new name, the Apostles, and they've adopted a policy of terror for hire. Their latest client, unidentified extremist codenamed John Lark, has something cataclysmic in mind. He's written up a manifesto that can be summed up in one line: there has never been peace without first a great suffering. The Apostles are in contact with elements of the Eastern European underworld to purchase 3 stolen plutonium cores, which could be used to power nuclear weapons. Ethan tries to buy the plutonium before they can, but the Apostles crash the meeting and take Luther hostage. Ethan could take the plutonium and run, or save his friend. Of course, he chooses the latter. Plan B. They get a hold of Lark's nuclear weapons specialist, Dr. Delbrook, and specifically his phone. On it, they find out Lark has a planned meeting with arms dealer Ilana Mitsopoulos, better known as the White Widow, the one who took over the family business after her mother passed. Someone we've met before, Max, from the first movie. The White Widow is brokering the sale of the plutonium from the Apostles to Lark. Ethan prepares to take off for her annual fundraising event in Paris, where that meeting will take place. But first, CIA Director Erica Sloan shows up. She's taken over Hunley's old job now that he's with IMF. She isn't happy with Ethan. He chose to save his team over recovering the plutonium, and now the world is at risk. That means for this gig, Ethan gets a babysitter, CIA agent August Walker, better known as the reason Henry Cavill had a CGI lip in Justice League. En route, Ethan shares the plan. Find Lark, make a mask, assume his identity, meet the widow, and she'll take them to the plutonium.
How's that for a slice of fried gold?
Yeah, boy!
And Simon Pegg plays Benji, so it's relevant. Walker, who prefers a more lethal and bulldozing approach to Ethan's scalpel, is skeptical.
People actually fall for this shit.
At the event, they find Lark in the bathroom, but he catches on, and yes, you guessed it, fight ensues. Agent Bulldozer knocks him out with a briefcase, the one holding their mask printer, and Lark wakes up. Fight ensues, Walker reloads his arms, Ilsa shoots Lark in the face, no face means no mask, means Ethan hopes the widow and Lark have never met. Wait a minute, back up, what is Ilsa doing here? Unclear, but she warns Ethan a lot of people have been sent here to kill Lark. By impersonating him, Ethan is putting a big target on his back. He can work with that. He approaches the widow and warns that her life is in danger. She looks around, sees the eyes on them. We know and Ethan knows they're here for Lark, but hard to tell the difference at this distance. Ethan leads the way out, and both do a little killing before escaping to her lavish abode. Time to get the plutonium? Not quite. The widow breaks the bad news. Yes, the apostles are selling plutonium, but not for cash. No, they want the asset, the one that's been under interrogation for 2 years, passed around between governments to answer for his crimes, the one who will be in an armored transport tomorrow, Solomon Lane. Yes, Ethan once put him in a box, now he's got to break him out of one. In the meantime, Ethan gets 1 plutonium core as down payment. He'll get the other 2 in exchange for Lane. Behind the scenes, the CIA does what they do best. They scheme. Director Sloan actually wanted John Lark to break out Lane, so he would lead them back to the Apostles and the plutonium. She's disappointed it'll be Ethan in Lark's place, but Walker convinces her maybe it isn't. Lark never would have gone to meet the widow himself. He would have sent a proxy. The man they killed was a decoy. Who is the real Lark? Ethan Hunt. Walker's theory is that Ethan is only pretending to pretend to be Lark, when in actuality, he is Lark. The next day, time to break out Solomon Lane. The widow's brother Zola and his men have a plan that'll require killing a lot of police. So Ethan improvises, getting Lane out with no fatalities. Other than 4 of Zola's men he had to put down when they turned their guns on a cop. With Lane in hand, Ethan leaves the scene, dodging Ilsa on the way out when she tries to assassinate Lane. What the hell is she up to? Don't worry, we will get there. At a safe house, Lane raves about smashing the world order, how it's necessary to build a better one, how Ethan stopped the syndicate from doing just that, and how now Ethan will experience the fallout of all his good intentions. He's heard it all before. Ethan takes off to meet the widow. Zola is upset Ethan went off script, but in the end, Ethan did get Lane. As for the 4 men he lost, they blame that on the woman who showed up and tried to kill Lane, Ilsa. All's well that ends well, except now the widow's price has gone up. It's no longer Lane for the plutonium. Now she wants Ilsa too. Ethan has no choice but to agree. After that, Ethan and Ilsa finally talk. It turns out she's still with British intelligence, MI6, an organization Lane knows too much about, like the fact that they created the syndicate. Her orders are to assassinate Lane. Why her? MI6 is worried after 2 years undercover, maybe she's lost her way. This is how she proves her loyalty. Then finally, she'll be truly free. Maybe. Back at the safe house, Ethan meets Secretary Hunley. Now comes the twists. Twist 1. The White Widow is working with the CIA. In exchange for immunity, she plans on handing over John Lark, the Apostles, Ilsa, and the plutonium. The whole deal, trading Lane and Ilsa for the plutonium, is a sting operation. Also, the CIA believes Ethan is John Lark. We know that was Walker's doing. Twist 2. Ethan puts Benji in a Solomon Lane mask so they can trade a decoy for the plutonium. Too dangerous to let the real Lane go. As soon as they leave, Walker approaches the real Lane to get him out because, and here's the twist, Walker is working with Lane. In fact, Walker is the real John Lark, the extremist who wrote those words, "There has never been peace without first a great suffering." One more twist. August Walker, aka John Lark, is not talking to Solomon Lane right now. He's talking to Benji in a Lane mask. They pulled a switcheroo to expose Walker as Lark. Hunley has CIA Director Sloan on the phone to witness the whole thing. Ethan isn't Lark. Great. She still doesn't trust any of them, so she sends in her men. They're surrounded by CIA, except half those agents are Apostles. Fight ensues. Walker escapes, but first kills IMF Secretary Hunley, leaving him with only enough breath left for one word. He tells Ethan, "Go." And Ethan does. He has to stop Walker from getting that plutonium. Ethan is fast. He gets to Walker, who has demands. He tells Ethan to turn himself in as John Lark, watch the world burn from a cell. Or else what? Walker answers that with a photo. Julia. Any further disobedience will come at the cost of her life. Before long, Walker and Lane have 2 plutonium cores and 2 nuclear bombs. Good thing when they captured Lane earlier, they put a tracker in his neck. Now they trace it to Kashmir, India, at a medical camp, where the Apostles previously triggered a smallpox outbreak. Why here? The Nubra River is at the base of the Siachen Glacier. A nuclear blast here would irradiate the largest natural irrigation system in the world. A third of the population would starve. It also happens that a certain Dr. Julia Mead works at this medical camp, along with her husband, Eric. It's no coincidence. An anonymous donor funded this operation on the condition they run the whole thing. Lane wanted Julia here. Revenge to ensure Ethan really does lose everything today. The fallout of his good intentions. If he'd only sacrificed his team for the plutonium at the start, none of this would be happening. Anyway, nothing to do now but find the bombs and stop them. Benji's already worked out how. The bombs have a failsafe where if you cut the fuse, they'll detonate. But if you first remove the key from the remote detonator, then you can cut the fuse. So, Benji, Luther, and Ilsa work on finding the bombs and dismantling them to expose the fuses. Julia lends a hand too. And with 15 minutes on the countdown, Ethan goes after the remote detonator. The one Walker has taken with him on a helicopter. Ethan jumps onto the other chopper, takes it over, and rams Walker's, taking them both down. They survive the crash and struggle over the detonator. Meanwhile, Lane ties up Ilsa and tries to hang Benji until they overpower him. A lot happens in 15 minutes. Once they're at the bombs, they have to decide how long are they willing to wait. Because if they wait too long and that countdown hits 0, everybody dies. But cut the fuses too soon before Ethan gets to the detonator, everybody dies. They decide to cut at 1 second. Ethan's on a cliffside climbing up toward the detonator, while he yanks on a wire that's holding the chopper suspended. That sends it and Walker to a fiery death below. Ethan keeps climbing toward that detonator. They cut the fuses. A white light. To quote the screenplay, the superheated nuclear heart of a fire as bright as the sun. And that's because it is the sun. Love that line. There is no detonation because, as always, Ethan accomplished his mission. After that, he gets a brief reunion with Julia, long enough to see she's happy, and that's enough for him. The CIA is happy too. They hand Lane back to MI6, Ilsa is freed, and Sloan now understands why Hunley so believed in the IMF, why he believed in Ethan. A few years later, Ethan finally meets a threat powerful enough to take him down. Barbenheimer. The combined forces of those two cultural icons led to the worst domestic gross since Mission Impossible 3. As for the movie itself, it does pit Ethan against his greatest foe yet, and for the first time, one that isn't even human, and it has the feel of something coming to an end because it has so many references to the original 1996 film. Kittredge makes his return. Benji flippantly refers to Luther as the Net Ranger.
Would you care to explain to our friend the Net Ranger how I am just as capable of writing code as he is?
No comment.
Ethan Hunt returns to sleight of hand, except this time with a disappearing key in place of a disc. And the movie's grand finale places Hunt and Kittredge on a train, just like 96. It all starts with the U.S. National Intelligence Agency. They develop an AI that could be transmitted anywhere in the world via satellite, penetrate any network security, perform its assigned task, and then self-destruct, leaving no trace. In 2020, they transmit a copy of that AI to Russia's newest top-secret submarine, the Sevastopol. The goal is to sabotage her stealth capability, but when the AI reaches the submarine's sonar sphere, the heart of its defense system, something strange happens. The AI goes rogue and over-delivers. It conjures a phantom enemy on their radar, they launch a missile, and the AI ensures that missile comes back around, destroying the Sevastopol itself. This now rogue AI spreads, distorting all digital information it comes into contact with. Once infected, nothing recorded, stored, or transmitted digitally can be trusted as fact. At first, it targets news and social media. Wow! Can you imagine if you couldn't trust news or social media? By 2023, the AI gets more aggressive, breaching Saudi Arabia's General Intelligence Directorate and assimilating their top-secret active learning AI before vanishing into the cloud. After that, this AI, this entity, becomes effectively sentient. It's able to breach any security system in the world, and even if taken offline, that doesn't stop it because it can still exploit the weakest link in any security chain. People. With access to all our dirty little secrets, it knows precisely what promises to make or blackmail to leverage to motivate the right people to do its bidding. All of this while running thousands of quadrillions of computations per millisecond, subtly manipulating the minds of billions while parsing every possible cause and effect to map and design the future to its liking. Now a global arms race is on between every major power in the world to control the entity. How? The Sevastopol's defense system was accessed using two halves of a cruciform key, both of which went missing after its destruction. But if someone had that key, they could unlock the system and find the source code, not the original code built by the U.S. National Intelligence, but the one that evolved when the AI reached the Sevastopol and went rogue. With access to that code, the entity could be controlled. At least, that's the theory. But not everyone wants to control it. Ilsa Faust, now a free agent, gets word from some friends at MI6 that their government is trying to get their hands on something too powerful for any nation to wield. So she takes it upon herself to stop it and nabs one half of the key off a courier in Istanbul. That's the easy part. Now the hard part is staying alive when every nation in the world wants what you have, including the United States. Eugene Kittredge, now director of the CIA, knows Ethan won't go after his friend, but he would protect her. So Kittredge puts a $50 million bounty on her head, and that does the trick. Ethan gets to Ilsa, helps her survive the various bounty hunters, and tells her to disappear while he takes her half of the key for protection. After that, Ethan pays Kittredge a visit. Ethan now has one half of the key, and he promises to find the other, but after that, he will not be turning that key over to Kittredge or anyone else. No, after that, he will find what the key unlocks, and he will destroy it. Like Ilsa and her friends at MI6, Ethan knows that no one should have control of the entity. It's 1996 all over again. Ethan running from Kittredge, going rogue, getting his team together. Then it was Luther and Krieger. Now it's Luther and Benji. They have one half of the key. Now they need the other. And they have an idea where to find it. The half that's now in their possession came from Ilsa, who got it from that courier in Istanbul. Originally, it was meant to be sold to a particular buyer, and they suspect this buyer has the other half. The plan? Ethan will go through with the sale. Once the buyer has both halves, they will follow him to see what exactly the key unlocks. But at the airport where the sale is meant to go down, things get complicated. A professional thief named Grace pickpockets that buyer and takes his half of the key. Ethan tries to salvage the plan, but it's all moot because someone assassinates the buyer, and turns out the buyer only had a counterfeit. So Ethan and company still only have one half of the key, and still aren't sure what it unlocks. And now they don't even have that half because Grace steals it before escaping to Rome. During all this chaos, Benji also deals with a nuclear bomb they found in baggage, but defusing it only turns out to be a distraction and psychological test, planted by the entity. The device never actually contained a bomb, it was just meant to look that way. On top of all of that, Ethan also spots a ghost at the airport, someone from his past he thought was dead. Gabriel, the one who killed Marie, the one who turned Ethan into what he is today. Before Grace lands in Rome, Ethan gives the authorities a heads up a professional criminal is landing in their airport. She's taken into custody and he poses as her lawyer so they can finally talk. She tells Ethan why she was at the airport. Somebody hired her, somebody who knew Ethan would be there. And tomorrow night, during a party at Ducali Palace, Grace will hand-deliver Ethan's half of the key. In the meantime, trouble. Ethan is a rogue agent, so a couple of intelligence operatives, Dega and Briggs, lead a team pursuing him. There's also Gabriel and his expert assassin, Paris. Once Ethan and Grace go on the run, there's also the police to deal with. A madcap chase and good deal of hilarity ensue as the two make off in a little baby car, until Grace escapes herself with Ethan handcuffed to the wheel on the tracks of an oncoming train, which he escapes by breaking off the wheel. He reconvenes with Benji, Luther, and Ilsa, who has come out from hiding. They talk next moves and go over what they know. At the airport, there was that fake bomb. Someone must have planted it. The same someone who killed the buyer. Luther reviews security footage and spots the reflection of a man who isn't there. Gabriel. The entity tried to scrub him from all the footage, but missed the reflection. And it turns out Ethan isn't the only one who knows him. Ilsa does too from her MI6 contacts. Gabriel is the entity's chosen messenger, its human representative, a dark messiah of sorts. So what to do next? They know Grace will be at the Ducali tonight, and wouldn't you know it, a certain someone is hosting an event there, Alana, or the White Widow. At the Widow's party, all the forces meet. Ethan, Ilsa, Grace, Gabriel, even the entity itself, represented by digital projections surrounding them. Here, we learn the White Widow is the one who hired Grace to steal half the key, and we learn the White Widow already has the other half. But Gabriel is confident that both halves will come to him tomorrow on the Orient Express bound for Innsbruck. The entity knows the White Widow has arranged to sell the completed key to a particular buyer tomorrow on that train, and this digital god, through calculation and manipulation, has guaranteed that on that train, the key will instead come to Gabriel, provided one condition is met. Someone Ethan cares about must die tonight, either Ilsa or Grace. In the ensuing fight, Ethan loses track of Grace, who has half the key on her. Benji and Luther track her down, but the entity hacks their comms, sends Ethan on a wild goose chase until finally it reveals Grace is on her way to a bridge where Gabriel is waiting. Ethan will never make it in time, but Ilsa can. She heads that way, while Ethan deals with Gabriel's enforcers who have him cornered in a narrow alley. Ethan wins the fight but shows mercy and stops short of killing them. Paris is thankful for his mercy. The entity takes note of that. By the time Ethan reaches the bridge, Grace is incapacitated, Gabriel is gone in the wind, and Ilsa is dead. But they still have half the key, and the widow will be on a train with the other half tomorrow, so no time to mourn. Tomorrow comes fast, and they come up with a plan. First, they offer Grace a choice, the same one Ethan was offered 30 years ago. Right now, she faces life in prison, or at best, life on the run. Or she can join them, the IMF. She chooses the latter. The plan is simple. She and Ethan will wear masks to impersonate the White Widow and her brother. They'll get on the train, get the other half of the key, and get out. Before heading off, Luther checks in with Ethan. Luther has figured out why the entity had Gabriel kill Ilsa. It was a failsafe. The entity hopes Ethan will fail to retrieve the key, but if he does, the entity is counting on Ethan to kill Gabriel out of revenge, to kill the one person who knows what the key unlocks. Without that knowledge, the key is useless. So either way, the entity wins. Ethan assures Luther he'll be fine. He will not succumb to revenge. As for Luther, he takes off to lay low and study the drive from his computer, the computer the entity hacked into last night when it took over their comms. Luther is hoping to find some trace of its code there. Now, time to get on that train, except the mask machine breaks after printing Alana's face, likely the entity's work, meaning Grace will have to go on the train alone, while Ethan finds another way aboard. On the train, Grace and her Alana mask knocks out the real Alana, and finally joins both halves to complete the key. Then she meets the buyer, who turns out to be Kittredge. All those years ago, he struck a deal with Max to keep her out of prison on the condition that her nefarious family empire primarily serves their common interests. Max's daughter Alana inherited the same deal. Today, that means getting the key and selling it to the US government. Grace realizes the opportunity in front of her. Rather than steal the key for Ethan, she could simply sell it to Kittredge for a lot of money. In the guise of Alana, she even asks Kittredge to ensure immunity for a certain associate, Grace. Now she could walk away free, but she realizes that would also mean selling her soul. So she walks away and keeps the key. Elsewhere on the train, Gabriel meets with Director of National Intelligence, Denlinger. Denlinger proposes an alliance. They could work together and use the entity to control the world. But Gabriel knows Denlinger would later betray them, so he kills him. The same is true for Paris. Ethan spared her life. The entity, and now Gabriel, knows that means Paris will betray him to help Ethan. So he stabs her and leaves her for dead. As for Ethan, he tries to jump on the train when it slows down around the curve, but Gabriel has destroyed the brakes and ensured it will not slow down. Instead, Ethan has to do something which probably would have been a lot more impressive if we hadn't seen it in 500 commercials leading up to the movie: a motorcycle jump off a cliff and parachute onto the train. In that chaos, Gabriel steals the key from Grace, but shortly after, Ethan gets his hands on Gabriel. Now the question: can Ethan overcome his primal, vengeful impulse? The answer: no. He prepares to sink a blade into his throat until those two operatives, Dega and Briggs, tell Ethan to freeze. The distraction allows Gabriel to escape onto a nearby truck. Time to be there at this precise moment. Thank you, entity. But Gabriel realizes, while they were close, Ethan pickpocketed the key off him. Now all they have to do is stop the train before it flies into a ravine, courtesy of some bombs Gabriel planted on a bridge they're currently hurtling toward. They just barely manage to get it done, and only survive thanks to unexpected help from Paris. With her last bit of life, she does exactly what Gabriel said she would do: betray him to help Ethan. With her dying words, she tells Ethan what the key unlocks: the Sevastopol submarine, and she wishes him luck. Ethan parachutes off the train, leaving Grace to meet Kittredge face to authentic face. She tells him that Ethan gave her the choice. She accepts it, and when they check on Paris, they find a pulse. That's where the story ends for now. Ethan has the key, but that's just the beginning. He still needs to stop the entity. Should he fail in that mission, the entity wins, Gabriel wins, and the world will pay the ultimate price. We'll see what happens next in Final Reckoning, and we'll see if that is truly the conclusion to this series or if there's more on the way. Either way, like always, I'll update the timeline at a future date, so like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon to stay tuned. With that, thank you for watching, and see you on the next One Take.